What's up, guys? Me and Larson are back. We're doing some win totals. We did the SEC already. We tackled the ACC. Big Ten still to come. That might take us a while,
A long
frankly.
time.
Yeah, but I'm excited to talk about the Big 12. This is a conference that, for the first time in a long time, does not feature Texas or Oklahoma. I think this is going to be so much fun for basketball, and I still think that there's like good football teams in this conference, and I think it should be pretty entertaining week after week. Maybe I've been squatting on this opinion. Maybe like this is our new Pac-12 kind of like we kind of got some fun teams and have some crazy games. They did take a few Pac-12 members, which we'll get to. But yeah, let's go ahead. I guess we can start with the first one. Arizona State, who might be bad this year. In all likelihood, probably will be bad this year. They lose Jaden Rashada. That's obviously the big loss. He heads to Georgia. And their out-of-conference schedule really is not that easy. They host Wyoming. They host Mississippi State. And they go to Texas State for the first 3 games of the series. And I can't guarantee that they're going to win all those games.
No, not at all. Especially, I guess I'll throw out Texas State now because I love Texas State over 8 wins. I think they're going to be a really good group of 5.
TJ Finley, unless he left already again.
Who?
TJ Finley.
He's gone. He went to the portal. They got Jordan McLeod now, who's from JMU. They've got
he's at Western Kentucky. That's what
really solid team. So all of that to say, I think Texas State is good, and I expect Texas State hosting Arizona State there to win that game. Mississippi State, as we mentioned in the SEC, I don't think they're going to be very good. And I really like Wyoming, actually. Wyoming is a team I bet the over on today. I like Wyoming a lot. So I can see like maybe an 0-5 because then you get Kansas and Utah after a bye week, and Texas Tech as well. So there's a world where they're winless for a while to start their season.
Maybe they get somebody like Cincinnati, who should also be pretty bad this year. Like October 19th is when I can see like maybe
their first win.
Like, that might possibly be their first win.
And it's a road game. It's at Cincinnati.
And I think Kenny Dillingham's a good coach, but this is just a program that's not looking too good for this year.
It's a young team too. I mean, I think they're playing the real long game. They're going long-term rebuild. They've got a brand new quarterback, a redshirt freshman, a lot of inexperience. They've got really one skill guy on offense. It's their running back, Cam Scadabo, who's actually pretty decent. But like you mentioned, they lost basically anyone who had any talent or any production on the team was gone. The defense really struggled last year. They're thin across the board. So I struggled, and I don't sound very excited, but I did play under 4.5 wins.
I think I am too. I think you talked me. I really hadn't dove into the deep potatoes of their schedule, but yeah, man, I don't see a lot of winnable games on here.
No, I mean their road games are hard, and if you look at like kind of what we talked about at the beginning, like if you look at their 5 easiest games, right? Wyoming is the game they're going to be favored in. I think Wyoming can absolutely beat them. Mississippi State they'll lose. Texas State they'll lose, and then it's at Cincinnati, who we'll get to Cincinnati in a second. I kind of actually came away feeling a lot better about Cincinnati than I did with Arizona State. And then who is it? Is it BYU? I think BYU is.
Yeah, BYU should be pretty bad.
That's the one they can win. I really struggle seeing 5 wins. They're looking down the road, so I'm playing under.
Yeah, who's starting quarterback for them this year? Did they have I feel like
Arizona State?
Oh my God, they have Jeff Sims. I forgot about that. Oh my God, yeah, I'm definitely taking their under.
It's an under 4.5 for sure.
Yeah, I think I'm going to roll with the under as well. I think that's a good pick. Going across to a team that surprised, I think a lot of people are going to be down on Arizona going into this year, probably because they lose Jed Fish to Washington. But I could see Arizona kind of keeping up the pace. They have talent. They obviously have immense talent at quarterback and receiver. They might have 2 of the top 5 players of those positions in the entire country. I think McMillan is up there with Luther Burden and some of these other elite receivers that we've talked about. And Noah Fafita, I don't know, man. Dark horse Heisman guy. I don't think they'll win enough games. But I love him, man. We were. This is a team last year. I think we were betting a lot, and they were starting Jaden Delore, and they were just losing in frustrating ways. He was throwing 4 or 5 interceptions. And they bring this kid in, and they start winning some games. Yeah,
we were kind of banging them about the turnover. Like this guy's not that good. He really was not good the year before either. I think where he was Washington State. So Fafita was a much needed change. And you also think, look at their 3 losses last year were all 1-possession losses. They lost that weird fluke game, a 7-point game to Mississippi State, where I think they turned it over 5 times. So it was coming. And then they lost by 7 to Washington, who ended up being pretty good as we saw. And they lost by 2 to USC. And like, what was it, triple overtime or something?
They should have won that game too. Their
3 losses.
That game made me so mad.
Great losses. I mean, that was a great year for them. But yeah, Jed Fish is gone. So they brought in San Jose State's Brent Brennan, who it seems like people have some really nice things to say about, and Fafita and McMillan, as you mentioned. They've got a great offensive line. I think the offense should be fine. The big question is just going to be they lost their leading rusher to followed Fish to Washington. So producing a running game is going to be kind of a big focus. But defensively, they've got talent. They've got experience. They actually returned their guy who was the Pac-12 leading tackler last year. Their big worry is the defensive line, where they actually lost 9 of 10 rotation players. 9 of 10 guys on the D-line are gone. And they really didn't secure any big additions in the portal. They got one guy from San Jose State who's pretty nice, first team all conference last year, but the defensive line's a huge worry. So I look at that as how are they going to handle these teams that have really good running games or really good running backs like Kansas.
I went to go look for Ollie Gordon on that schedule immediately after you said that. They don't play Oklahoma State.
They don't play. But you're going to get Kansas State who can run it really well. You're going to get Texas Tech, who has Taj Brooks as a really good running back. C.J. Donaldson at West Virginia, who has a great offensive line. R.J. Harvey and K.J. Jefferson at UCF. Like even Arizona State, who we mentioned is horrible. Like their biggest strength is running the ball. I mean, I don't know how the defensive line is going to hold up against some of these run-heavy teams. So that's the big question. And it's 7.5, I think. If you see 7.5,
I saw 8.5, and if it's at 8.5, I'd probably lean to the under.
I would definitely, yeah.
If you see 7.5 on DK right now, then I would probably stick with that.
Yeah. It would be an under at an 8. If you could get an 8 or 8.5, definitely under. I'm going to stay away.
Brennan's never won 8 games at San Jose State. And granted, I forgot they went undefeated without the bowl game in 2020. I just purged that from my memory. That was such a weird season. Yeah. I mean, they went 7-6 last year and lost the Hawaii Bowl. He's 0-3 in bowl games. Like, I know bowl games don't count towards win totals, but like, are we really not? If you see it at 8.5, I'd take the under. 7.5, I think that's probably
Fafita would need like the legit Heisman season of all time, which could, I mean, he could have a great year. They could win a lot of games. Did you see who their offensive coordinator is?
I did not.
It's Dino Babers.
Really?
Yeah, I was a little surprised to see that. Which isn't a bad hire. I mean, I think when you get a guy like that who is pretty respected and had Power 5 experience, like, sure, but it's just interesting. So it's a stay away for me though. I'll lean to the under probably.
Yeah, I'm gonna pass on that. Speaking of weird teams, Baylor. Yeah. Talk about a roller coaster of a program, man. This is a team that one year they'll win 11 games, and the next year they'll come out and win 3. They're kind of hard to get a read on sometimes for that reason. Out of conference game against Air Force. Don't ever recommend that. No. We know all about Air Force. If you watch our college football lock shows, we bet on Air Force pretty much every week. And guess what? They pretty much cover every week. So that's a team I wouldn't recommend tangling with. They got a manageable schedule, I would say, but I don't have a strong read on this. They'll beat Tarleton State. They have to go to Colorado, to West Virginia, to Houston. Like this is just a state that I just don't have any real strong feelings about Baylor going into this year.
Yeah, one of the cool things about the Big 12 is with it being as open as it is, I think you have probably 10 teams in the top tier that are 9 or 10 teams that are pretty legitimate. I mean, they're good teams. And then the downside of that is the bottom half, that bottom tier in the conference is not great. And Baylor for me is in that bottom half. So
they do have Daquan Finn though, who is a pretty good player, I will say.
Yeah, no, Daquan Finn's nice and he's explosive, but the numbers talked about kind of his big play to turnover ratio is not great. Like basically every big play he has leads to a turnover down the road. They are going from the ground and pound to more of an air raid because they got Jake Spavital, who's a pretty good offense coordinator. He was with Cal, he was with Texas State, and he's going to sling it around. And they've got a really good group of receivers. That's the good news. I mean, you're going to have an explosive quarterback with some great receivers, but their offensive line allowed the most sacks in the conference last year, and that's still the biggest concern. So if he can't do anything if he doesn't have any time. So I don't know if they're going to fix that. I did see on the defensive side that Aranda is going to call the defense for the first time since that LSU championship season. So with a defense that was pretty leaky last year that lost a lot of guys, mainly their entire defensive line, can Aranda kind of muster up some of that magic he had when he was at LSU and move this defense forward? I don't know. Their trenches are pretty bad on both sides of the ball. So at 5.5, it's not a bet for me, I don't think, because I would probably lean to the under, but I'm just not going to take it. You never know. I mean, at Colorado is a big turning point. If they can win that, then they're alive. But I don't know.
Yeah, no, I don't love it. Can't say I love it. I'm going to stay away from this one. Let's talk about BYU. And speaking of Baylor, coming full circle, Gary Bohannon still around somehow. By the way, he is also at BYU. I don't even know if he's a starter. It might be that Retzlaff kid, but BYU's schedule. I took one look at this and I said, I kind of thought their win total was a little low. I was like, BYU usually they come out, they've got some spunk. Man, two of your first 3 games at SMU and at Wyoming, I can pretty much all but say they're probably going to be starting 1 and 2, and that's a hole you're going to be digging out of going into conference play.
Yeah, well, and then don't forget the next week hosting Kansas State, so it's probably 1 and 3.
Yeah,
these are I have bets. I think we both do. Like we have bets the bets we like, the bets that we do bet, and then we have the bets that like I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna think. Like they're in the waiting room. BYU under 4.5 is in the waiting room for me, just because. Looking at the roster, this is not the same BYU teams from a few years ago where, like you said, they could come out and like surprise some teams and be fun and be cool. This is not those BYU teams anymore. And their offense was really bad last year. Their offensive line was awful last year, a lot like Baylor's. And so the offense was, I think, only like 22 points per game last year. I don't see that getting much better. And the defense really struggled. I think the defense was fine in non-con, but they struggled when they got to the Big 12 play because then you play all these pretty good offenses. And they gave up way too many rushing yards because their defensive line was horrible. They only had 11 sacks last year, which was last in the nation. I mean, they were lucky to get 1 sack in a game. And so I don't know if they're going to generate a pass rush enough to be any good. The low point was, I don't know if you remember this, they played TCU, and TCU had their 3rd string quarterback and absolutely ripped BYU apart and won 44-11. So that's kind of, I'm like, ugh. And then you look at these offenses that they're going to play, like, how are they going to hang against SMU's offense, Arizona, Oklahoma State, Kansas?
They might get like bullied by Wyoming.
Yeah.
Like I kind of think Wyoming is going to be a much tougher team than they are.
Even like I didn't even mention Kansas State. Kansas State was going to be really good, and then they play at Baylor. Like we just mentioned, Baylor's going to go air raid. Like, are we sure that BYU can hang with the air raid?
My main bone with BYU is I think they at least got a pretty favorite. Like I mean. Yes, it's not favorable for them because no game's really favorable for them, but they did draw Houston first year under Willie Fritz, which I mean, he's prone to turn around programs pretty quickly. So I don't know if that's a big help, but you see Baylor on there. They have games that like, I think that they could be playing someone who is equally as bad and they can kind of be more toss-ups than anything. But I definitely agree with you that I would lean under 4.5.
I saw this too. I saw that they're projected favorites over Southern Illinois, easy. Arizona State, they're at Arizona State. They're at Wyoming, and then they host Houston. Those are 4 games they're projected favorites in. So even if they won those, they're still at 4. You got to find another win somewhere. So that's part of the reason I'm leaning to the under. But I'll go ahead and say this: if they are favored at Wyoming in week 3,
Wyoming is a home dog. Gimme.
That is a bet for Wyoming for sure. So just throwing that out there.
I love when we do these, and then like week 3 or week 4 will come. We'll be like, oh yeah, remember we were talking about that?
We got to do that. Yeah, that's a lock for me.
I promise this conference gets better, guys, but we're going to move on. We're in alphabetical. We're moving to Cincinnati.
Yeah.
We're moving to Cincinnati. We should play guess that quarterback. I assume you've done your homework and you know who it is, though, right?
It was I think I wrote it down. Oh, it's the kid from Indiana, Sorsby.
Yeah, Brendan Sorsby. Yeah. Man, I forgot about him.
Yeah,
easy to forget about. I don't watch a ton of Indiana football, but I did some games last year. Cincinnati's probably going to be pretty terrible. This is not Luke Fickle's Cincinnati team. They're still in the midst of probably what's going to be a long rebuild. Yeah, I don't have many nice things to say about them. I don't know what you got.
Well, they're not going to be great, but like I mentioned with Arizona State, I read kind of Houston's going to be, I think, the worst team in the conference probably, and then you have Arizona State, BYU, Cincinnati are probably the next 3, and I left reading those 3 feeling so much better about Cincinnati. Just because it's an offense that revolved a lot around running the football, which they were 5th nationally in rush yards per game last year, which is kind of crazy. And they returned their running back, who was really good. They returned the exact same offensive line. So we know, at the bare minimum, we know what Cincinnati can do. They can run the ball, and they return all the guys to do it. So I would expect similar results there. They got another good Ohio State transfer, who's a number 2 running back. Sorsby has some upside from Indiana, and I think he could be interesting with kind of some wide receivers that they return. They got a guy from UTEP who we had UTEP. What was 0 last year? We did a little thing on UTEP. They had a good wide receiver, Tyron Smith, who came to Cincinnati, so that's a good pickup. So I think the offense, despite being a little a little bad last year can take a step up if things click right. And then defensively, installing a new defense to a group that gave up 30 points last year, they're probably not going to improve by much, but they've at least got a guy, Dante Corleone, their defensive lineman, who's like a first-team All-Big 12 guy, who's really good. So there's at least a good guy you can hang your hat on, and they went to the portal and added some pretty good defensive backs, things like that. So all of that to say, I think there's a world where Cincinnati can at least click, and they're gonna get Towson. They can win. They will get Pitt at home. I've mentioned Pitt in the ACC. I think Pitt's on a bad run here. I think Cincinnati can win that game. They go to Miami of Ohio, who they lost to in overtime last year. I think Cincinnati can beat that. Win that game. Then they play Houston. So what if Cincy starts 4-0? Really, I mean, you're that close to an over 5 or an over 5.5, and I think they can surprise some teams and beat Arizona State. Maybe TCU. So I have not bet this at all, but like I said, it's in the waiting room for Cincinnati on over, and I'm seeing over 5 minus 160. I don't like the minus 160, but I think they can win 5 or 6 games. I think they could surprise some teams.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you what I gave you with a lot of these teams. It's just like it's the Stephen A. Smith. Like I get it; those are good points.
Yeah,
I'm not.
We're not going to take a reach here.
I'm not sold. Scott Satterfield also. If I remember correctly, it was not very well liked towards the end of his tenure at Louisville. So you have to wonder.
Yeah, it was a weird hire to begin with. I think he was like going to get fired anyway, and then Cincy took him, which was strange.
Sure. Hey, whatever.
Important spot to remember on the roster here, and then we can move on. They have a bye before they go to UCF, and UCF comes off of the Florida game. So just if there's a world where maybe UCF beats Florida, that's a major hangover spot. So look for places like that, but. Just remember that.
Yeah, so I guess we're going to talk about easily the most polarizing team
in
the entire conference. It's Colorado.
Yeah.
Last year, I put a very, very large sum of money on Colorado's win total under, which frankly, there's no crying and gambling, but it should have cashed. I mean, they got extremely lucky against Colorado State. They came out and they handed it to TCU. I'll give them that. They come out and whooped TCU. But they hit 4. They won 4 games. I think they maybe went 4-4-0, and then they didn't win a single game the rest of the year. They won their last game in like October. I don't think anybody is going to be taking them lightly this year. I want to bet this game, but every square on the planet is going to be on North Dakota State against Colorado. It's a Thursday game. That's a standalone too. So I probably will be betting on it then, unfortunately. And then they travel to Nebraska, which Nebraska is another team last year that just absolutely just blew the game against Colorado. We were watching. Jeff Sims fumbled 3 or 4 times. And 2 Jeff Sims mentions in one video, man. I can't believe we're
what a great
and then Colorado State, who, hey, they gave them all they handled last year. Colorado State's going to be hosting this time. I don't think it's a guarantee they get to a bowl. I think the main thing here with Colorado is you have to consider that a team like this is probably going to be juiced up a little bit because the public's going to be eating it up. And so I think that win total might be a little bit inflated. I don't know if I'm going to bet the under yet. I haven't really decided, but if I had to take a pick, I would take the under again. That's not me being a hater. It's just reality.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. I'm not going to bet anything win total wise, but I will say this. So for the roster, I mean, we know they have an insane amount of roster turnover. That's how they work with the portal and everything like that. So your only big pieces are Shadur and Travis Hunter and Jimmy Horn on the offense. And then the offensive line is brand new, which was obviously a weakness last year.
Seaton's probably going to be starting, isn't he?
I think he's starting. The 5-star from where's the IMG? He's going to start. Yeah. They gave up 56 sacks last year, which was second worst in the entire country. I don't see that, it could improve obviously, but I don't see that being a strength for them. They did get Will Shepherd from Vanderbilt. They lost Dylan Edwards, who was their running back, which was kind of a big piece because he was really good for them. So the offense is kind of just, they're going to lean so heavily on their 3 or 4 guys that are the legit weapons. After that, it's all brand new stuff. And the defense was really bad last year. They returned only 1 player who had more than 1 sack. So I like the offense, a lot of roster turnover. The secondary is that probably the strongest part of the defense. They have some talent, they have some experience, so that's the strength. But everywhere else, they struggle to stop the run and rush the passer. So I wouldn't expect anything from the D-line. Looking at the schedule, like you said, I mean, it would be so much fun to bet North Dakota State week 1, but everyone's going to do that. The bet that I actually took was week 3 at Colorado State. I got Colorado State plus 8.5. just because that game, I was disgusted last year watching Colorado State basically dominate in a way for that entire game, and just a stupid penalty here and there, things like that. Colorado State was much better than them, and they're going to where is it? Fort Collins? Where's Colorado State? Fort Collins?
Yeah, Fort Collins.
They haven't hosted Colorado there since the mid '90s, so that place is going to be a zoo. Yeah. So I think that game. I like Colorado State in that game. Then the other one is they're off a bye playing Kansas State. Kansas State has tremendous trenches and a great roster where they will run the football a lot. Like I just mentioned with this Colorado defense, they struggle to stop the run. I don't think the defense is going to be much improved. It's Kansas State -6 in that game. Kansas State is also off of a bye. So I went ahead and laid the points with Kansas State -6 because I just think Kansas State should be able offensively to move it whenever they want. So those are the only bets I have regarding Colorado. I'm not going to lean to anything on the win total, but I do feel strongly about them in some games just because I think this roster has a lot of weaknesses that will get exposed.
Right, and you can always count on the public juicing up the line for you. Yeah. I will say with Colorado this year, they're not, people kind of liked them to start the year last year, and I think that their whole shtick is worn thin on a lot of teams, and I don't think anybody's going to be sleepwalking into any of their games, and that's just the price you pay, I guess.
Their last 4 games too, at Texas Tech versus Utah, at Kansas versus Oklahoma State. That's probably 0-4. So if you're going to bet, if you're one of those people that wants to bet an over for Colorado, you need to make sure you get to 6 before the end of October. Otherwise, you might be done. You might be cooked.
It's going to be difficult. I didn't notice how bad the top of this conference was because once we finished with Houston, who we're going to talk about,
we're good.
The rest of these teams are pretty good. I was like, man, is this really going to be bad this year? But a team that is going to be this bad this year. And look, I love Willie Fritz. Willie Fritz is awesome. What he did at Tulane was awesome. I think Houston is a program that is a lot like SMU in some ways, that they're a bit of a sleeping giant. They're a little dormant right now. But I think Houston can be a good football team, and I think Willie Fritz can take them there. They are going to be bad this year, and they play a brutally tough schedule. That's just reality. First game, they play UNLV in that go-go offense. I don't know. First game as well. I don't know if I
like UNLV a lot this year. I think they're good.
I do too.
That might be a bet for me.
Even after losing their quarterback. But we also have at Oklahoma game 2 before finishing up with Rice before the non-conference schedule. Look, Houston's devoid of talent. This is a rebuild. There's a reason they fired Dana Holgorsen, who I love Dana Holgorsen, but it was time. Maybe with the resources that he's been given, Willie Fritz makes something happen in year 1. But I'm not going to count on it. I don't have a bet for this, but I just don't think Houston's going to be a very good team this year.
Yeah, no bet for me either. Willie Fritz was kind of a surprising move, like almost like a lateral move from Tulane.
Yeah, I was kind of
thinking with Georgia Tech and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. It did feel a little lateral.
Vegas has over 3.5 juice to like -160, so they think they can get to 4. I just looked at the roster though, and I don't see that at all because their defense is awful. Two returning starters from a defense that was basically 100th or worse in every major category. So that's going to take a lot of work. And then the offense, it's like Donovan Smith, who
I was going to ask if you wanted to play guess that quarterback.
Donovan Smith is back. I did not know that Mekhi Muse transferred to Houston.
I did know that, but I had just completely forgotten, I guess.
Yeah. They lost their best wide receivers, their tight end, their offensive line. They're looking for playmakers and guys who can block. So if you can do that, go to Houston. But also, their 4 wins last year because they were 4-8. And I know it was a different coach and everything, but their 4 wins last year, there was 3-point win against UTSA in week 1, where we had UTSA and Frank Harris play like the worst game of his career. I think he threw 4 picks.
Didn't we have some intel that like his girlfriend broke up with him like a couple
something like that?
That's
why
right.
He
played so bad. Right.
Yeah, he was all on his head. They beat Sam Houston, who was horrible. They beat West Virginia on a Hail Mary. And then they beat Baylor by 1. Those were their 4 wins last year. So nothing impressive. And so now you're going to come back to like UNLV, who is my pick, my bet to win the Mountain West. I think they'll be really nice. They play Rice, who I've seen a lot of people say can win 7 or 8 games. At Cincinnati, I like Cincinnati more. It's a lot of brutal games. And Oklahoma, Oklahoma, Iowa State, Kansas State, and Utah. Those are all losses. At Arizona, that's probably a loss. So it's going to be a rough year, like you said, for Willie Fritz, but again, playing the long game, and we'll see what he can do next year and down the road. But this year is not the one. And there's no bet for me, but they're the worst team in the conference by far.
If there was a bet for me, it would be under, but I don't like to count out Willie Fritz because he can, with his style of offense, he can make magic happen. So
yeah, careful.
I hope they're good. I love Willie Fritz. I'm not going to hold my breath. Let's talk about some teams that actually are good. Finally, we're finally starting to see some 7.5, 8.5, and 9.5 on the win totals here. Let's move to Iowa State. Ross Becht is back, or Rocco Becht, excuse me.
I like him.
Yeah, I do too. They obviously play Iowa out of conference. Arkansas State, the fighting Butch Joneses, and North Dakota, which North Dakota is a good FCS team, but they should be able to handle them. That Iowa game is probably going to decide this win total. That's going to be really big for them. If they get that one early and they can start 3-0, that would be huge for a team. I think that's still sitting at 7.5.
Yeah.
No pick for me, but go ahead.
God, I wanted to bet the over a lot with them because, by the way, this is like one of the top teams in returning production. 86% production returns on the team. It's like number 1 or number 2, depending on where you look. But I wanted to bet the over so bad, but I just can't because all of these top-tier teams, I really like these top-tier teams, so someone's going to have to go under. But if you remember, Rocco Becht was the guy, he was thrown in to start because of that gambling scandal.
Yeah.
And ended up being Big 12 Freshman of the Year. He looks like a real stud. So they feel great about him. Their offensive line is really good. Their pass catchers are really good. I expect the offense to improve a lot from the offense that was basically 4 touchdowns a game last year. I think it could go way up because it was one of the nation's youngest teams last year, especially offensively. And now it's paying off because all of those guys have experience. They're going to come back. I like that a lot. And then the defense, Matt Campbell usually, for all of his flaws, can produce a good defense, and they return 9 starters. It's usually one of the Big 12's better defenses with a pretty veteran defensive staff. So I would look for the defense to be one of the better ones in the conference. And they have, I think their strength is their secondary. There are a lot of really good secondaries in this conference, but Iowa State's going to be one of the best. It's going to be Iowa. Like you mentioned, that Iowa game is huge. Can they finally get over the hump and please beat Iowa? This is the year for Iowa State to get over the hump because you're going to get Utah and Kansas State, which are all on the back end of the schedule. But before that, it's pretty easy. Like Baylor and Houston and West Virginia and UCF, all winnable games. So
I like Matt Campbell. Yeah, I think he's a good coach. It's kind of crazy that, we were talking about this guy as a candidate for the UFC job, and he's gone 7-6.
Notre Dame and all that. Yeah.
He's won 7 games 2 of the last 3 years. They were awful in 2022. I don't know, man. They'll never fire him, obviously, but he kind of has a little bit to prove this year, in my opinion.
He does. I think this is the year for them to really take that big step. The other thing is we like these kind of regression stats and things like that. Their last 3 seasons, they are 1-6 in games decided by 4 points or less, which shouldn't come as a surprise because we've probably bet on them in half of those games and lost, which is just.
I've sworn off Iowa State. It's like a hard drug. I've sworn them off. I don't need Iowa State anymore.
But surely there will be some regression, some close game regression, you would think. But I wanted to play the over. I'm not going to. If you wanted to bet like them to make the Big 12 championship is plus 475, I think there's a really high ceiling for them. I think they could have a big year, but a lot of teams could. So I don't know. It's no bet for me on that.
Yeah. Let's talk about my darlings of the Big 12. Could you imagine one day me telling you that Kansas football would have an 8.5 win total?
Yeah.
A team that I think for a decade won 2 conference games, and I think they're both against
forever.
Texas.
Yeah.
But just a pathetic program for so long. Lance Leipold, who has by all accounts turned down multiple job offers at probably better programs, has just stuck it out in Kansas. And now they have 2 of my favorite players in the entire Big 12, and Jalen Daniels and Devin Neal. I think Kansas is going to be pretty good again this year. Luke Grimm's a good player as well. They have 3 seniors on that wide receiver. Their offensive line is a little young. I think at the tackles, but the interior of it, they've got experience on the interior. I think they'll have a pretty good offense, and I think they're going to be able to run the ball really effectively.
Yeah, I like the offense a lot too. The biggest loss was actually losing their OC, Kotelnicki, who went to Penn State, which is a really good hire for Penn State. But they brought in Jeff Grimes, who used to be at Baylor. They brought him in, and he knows the playbook and the system really well. So I don't think there will be much of a drop off there. The only worry is the quarterback and the health concern, because they used to throw Jason Bean in there when Daniels was hurt, because Daniels was hurt all the time, and Bean was really good. Well, Bean's gone now, so it's like if Daniels gets hurt, you might be cooked. And so he's got to stay healthy. He's played 18 games over 3 seasons. And you mentioned all the other guys. Devin Neal's a great running back. Their wide receivers and tight ends and offensive line, really good.
They're a top-heavy squad.
I wanted to play over. I just couldn't do it because I can see, Daniels grabbing the back of his leg, in week 4, and you're cooked. So I don't know. Their defense will be really nice too. I mean, they've got some really good players like Kobe Bryant.
Kobe Bryant might be the first quarterback taken in April.
He's legit. Yeah, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the conference at the very least. But they've got a good defense, and the schedule's not that bad either. I think another reason, something that swayed me from taking the over, which I found like over 8 minus 125 is probably a great bet. But their home stadium's doing some reconstruction. They're playing all of their home games at Arrowhead. So, not too far, but just I wonder if that takes what type of home field advantage or whatever that plays into. But the schedule's really not that bad. I mean, they're at Illinois and they play UNLV, who again I think will be good. That's a great Friday night game in week 3. But it's pretty manageable from that point on. I mean, they could definitely this could be a 9-win team, but the home field thing and Daniel's health that keeps me away.
UNLV and Illinois are not too great out of conference draws. I will say that.
No.
And by the way, I completely forgot about Travis Hunter, who we've already talked about when I was talking about first corner taken, and Will Johnson, who we haven't talked about yet. But Kobe Bryant, great player.
That's the compliment to Kobe Bryant. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a compliment to him. It's just a little hyperbole. But I agree. I like Kansas, but you got the nail on the head with the Jalen Daniels thing. We lost a lot of games last year where he would just come up limping, and it's like, all right, well, here we go again.
Yeah. I mean, they play 5 of the 6 worst teams in the conference, and they're probably going to be favored in 10 games looking at it. I mean, I think they're underdogs at K-State, and then they will probably be underdogs maybe at West Virginia, maybe. I mean, that's really about it. Like it's a great schedule. Get over the hump, Kansas.
If this was CFB 25 and I could turn the injuries off, I would take it 100%.
You're good. That's a 10-win team. If you can turn injuries off, that's a 10-win team.
Can't do it. So I'll still be rooting for him. I'll probably still bet him a couple times. Love me some Kansas football. Let's talk about Kansas State, though. In-state rivals, a team that we talk about dormant programs, a program that was dormant for a while after a great run of success with Bill Snyder, like those Colin Klein-led teams, back when Kansas State was perennially like a top 15, top 10 squad.
Yeah.
Kind of rounding into form. They have Avery Johnson. And I remember the first time they brought that kid into the game, I was like, what a goofy-looking kid. He's got his hair spilling out of his helmet. Dude is so good. He's so good.
He's amazing. Yeah.
He's a great player. They do play at Tulane, but once again, no Willie Fritz. And then Tennessee Martin. Other than that, this isn't exactly a murderer's row of a schedule. I like them over 9.5. I haven't bet it yet, but I'm thinking that I'm going to be taking it.
So I bet over 9. I got over 9 at minus 125 just because I like the whole numbers. It makes it a little better for peace of mind. But like you mentioned, this is a really good roster, and Kleiman's done a great job coaching for the amount of years he's been there. I can't even remember what it's been, but one of my worries with like Ohio State and Will Howard was like Kansas State was fine to kind of let Will Howard go. Like they were like, push him out the door because that's how good Avery Johnson is. He's been amazing. And they're going to be a run-heavy team because he's a dual-threat guy. They got Dylan Edwards, who we mentioned, left Colorado, which is a great pickup because DJ Giddens was their starter last year. He was really good. So they're going to have 2 really good running backs behind a really
seniors littered all over the offensive line.
All over the place.
Experienced line.
Great. Yeah. And so I expect the offense to be really good. They were a top 10 offense last year, and they lost Colin Klein, who was OC. But I think that they should be fine and not miss a beat. They also got new quarterback coach who's Matt Wells, who used to be the Texas Tech coach. But he is a good offensive mind, and he actually was at Utah State, and for all of Jordan Love's big successful years were under Matt Wells. So I think Wells can come in and really do good things for the offense. And then the defense, for my money, it's probably the best defense in the conference along with Utah, but this could be the best defense in the conference for sure. They allowed 21 points per game last year. They should be better this year because they returned basically the entire 2 deep, which is so rare these days. But basically everyone who played big minutes last year or played it all last year is back. So they've got all conference players like at all 3 levels. I think it's a great defense. So I would expect it to be pretty hard to score on Kansas State. I think they should score a lot. And all 4 of their losses last year were by 1 possession. I mean, this was a team that was in a lot of close games and did a lot of really good things. So I like Kansas State a lot, especially at 9. I mean, they got to lose 3 games, so like they got Arizona at home. I mentioned Arizona has a horrible defensive line. I think Kansas State should run all over them. Oklahoma State will be tough. They will play Kansas at home. Like, it's a lot of favorable games that lean their way. So I like the over a lot. I think this is a playoff team. I think so.
Yep, I have to agree with you. I think they'll win the conference. I'm going to take the over on this as well. Speaking of teams that I think could win the conference and that I think that are being very underrated at the moment, it's Oklahoma State. The fact of the matter, Oklahoma State is a team that always punches up. They're always at least as good as they're supposed to be, and they're rarely not going to meet expectations. The second thing is that they have Ollie Gordon, who's maybe pound for pound the best player in the country. Just ridiculous talent at running back. The pedigree of Oklahoma State running backs continues. You have Brendan Presley at receiver, who's a good player. I think they got five seniors on the offensive line. A lot of returning starters.
Yes.
My main problem is Alan Bowman. He stinks.
Unfortunately, yeah.
That's my main gripe with this team, and it probably what's going to keep me from betting them. He's a very high variance player. I think the defense is always going to be it's going to be good for the Big 12. I think, just subject to their standard. I think 7.5 is too low. I just could see Oklahoma State punching up. I don't think I'm going to take it, but if you do take it, I absolutely understand why.
Yeah. So this is actually, I think, my favorite win total bet of the entire season so far is Oklahoma State over 7.5. I took over 7.5, and I took over 8 because, like you mentioned, we know Ollie Gordon's amazing. Their offensive line is like the most experienced offensive line in the country. Not only do they return all 5 guys who are seniors, by the way, they return every backup. I mean, the entire 2 deep on the offensive line is back. Their one hole really was, like, I guess, running back depth. Like, what happens if Ollie Gordon's hurt, or there was that whole suspension thing, which he's not getting suspended, thankfully. But they went out and they got A.J. Green, the running back from Arkansas, a really good pickup for the number 2 running back spot. The question is just Alan Bowman, because, like you said, he's pretty mid. I mean, it's his 7th season of college football. You don't have to do anything amazing.
Yeah, anybody who says Stetson Bennett's only good because he played for so long has never watched Alan Bowman. Yeah. I remember Texas Tech. I completely memory hold that he was with Michigan. Completely forgot.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I remember him for Texas Tech, but he knows the conference well. I mean, he was there, and he's not going to wow you with anything, and he doesn't have to. Like, just do your job. Throw it to receivers. Give it to Ollie Gordon. He should have all day, protection for all day. But their receivers are really good. Like you said, you mentioned Brendan Presley. There was one guy that I did not know about, a guy from Washington State that they got as a transfer who was supposed to be their best receiver last year, and he got hurt and missed the whole year with injury, and he's back. So I think
Dejon Stripling?
Stripling, yeah. Their offense should be very nice. And like you mentioned about the defense, it's not Kansas State or Utah's defense. There needs to be some improvement, but Gundy, like you mentioned, finds a way to get these guys clicking. And I think they've got a good secondary. They've got 2 all Big 12 players, including the Big 12's leading tacklers back. I think they'll find a way, and I think the offense will be good enough that the defense can grow a little bit. And then the schedule is pretty favorable. You
got a bad Arkansas team.
Arkansas, they should beat Arkansas for sure. They do play South Dakota State, who is one of the best FCS teams, which is a little scary, but whatever. It is what it is. Get past week 1. They start with Utah. They're at Kansas State, and those are tough, and they could lose both of those. But don't be fooled. Don't panic, because the back end of the schedule is easy. It's BYU and Baylor and Arizona State and Colorado. I think it's very easy in the back stretch. They're going to be favored in 10 games. Those 2 games that they're underdogs in, it's +1 to Utah and +5.5 to Kansas State. Like, those are games that they're going to be in. So I think the schedule shapes up for them to have maybe 9 or 10 wins. I really do. And I think unless Bowman just absolutely screws this, which he could, which would suck a lot.
I'm about to have to throw some tomatoes at him or something, man. You got to get a job at that point if you're stinking it up in year 7.
But 7.5 for me, I had to pull the trigger, and it's my favorite one of the season. I think this is the team that could win 9. And
you talk me into it. And it's Oklahoma State, man. They're like the Steelers, man. Like, they're just always they're always they're gonna be well coached. They're gonna be tough.
Exactly. Number 3 in returning production, by the way, in the country. I mean, they were like, if I didn't drive that point home, they returned everybody.
Well, I would also like to say that as the offensive coordinator of Oklahoma State on CFP 25, I took them to an undefeated season, so we know what they're capable of.
So they're good vibes already coming in.
Yeah, this is the team that I think I knew the most about simply because I was playing a video game, which is fantastic. TCU, man, you talk about a team that 2 years ago in a national championship, last year just get absolutely pantsed week 1 by Colorado. They have honestly just a pretty horrid year last year. I think pretty much anything that could have gone wrong did go wrong for them. Josh Hoover is in at quarterback. Not familiar with him. They did get Ken Seals, the Vandy transfer. Right. They still have Trey Sanders, who came from Alabama. Looks like a lot of transfers on the O-line, like a lot of transfers. But they're, maybe it takes them some time to gel. Yeah. So I don't have very strong feelings. They play Long Island and Stanford. They should win their first 2 games. But after that, UCF, SMU, Kansas, you're probably looking at 2 and 3 before you get a break with Houston. Then you got Utah right after that. It's a tough schedule. So I don't know, man. I'm not a big believer in them this year, but who knows?
Yeah. Like you mentioned, there's some big time quarterback questions. Look at the other quarterbacks we've talked about we haven't even talked about Cam Rising. You've got Avery Johnson, Jalen Daniels, Rocco Becht, good quarterbacks. And this quarterback room is just not going to shape up. And especially in a quarterback room where we don't know who's going to start or who's going to be the best. And then you have an offensive line that's basically brand new, has no chemistry. That's a big worry. I have a lot of questions about the offense. Defensively, they brought in Andy Avalos, who's the defensive coordinator. Didn't know that. Interesting. So the defense should be okay. I don't think it's going to be – they're going to be a pretty middle of the pack defense. They do have, special team shout out, a freshman kicker and a freshman punter. That's a little scary. And so I kind of looked at all those questions, and then I looked at the schedule, right? You're sitting at 7.5 for your win total. You've got to win 8 games on this schedule, and they play UCF, who we haven't gotten to. I think UCF will be really good. They're at SMU. They're at Kansas. They're at Utah. I mean, those are all losses, I think. They host Oklahoma State. They host Arizona. That's – how many losses is that? 6?
Yeah.
I don't see for all the questions I saw on the roster, then I looked at the schedule. I don't see 8 wins on there at all. I projected them at 6-6. So I had to take an under. I had to take an under 7.5.
Yeah, no, I don't hate it. I don't hate it at all. They did get Josh Brockermeyer. He was at Alabama. That's right. I was like, I know that name from somewhere.
Yeah. I'm trying to look at even looking again. I mean, Stanford and Long Island are wins. Houston at home is a win. That's 3. We'll say they beat Texas Tech and Baylor. That's 5. And beat Cincinnati for 6. And you're telling I don't know.
I don't know where this number's coming from. I
don't see it at all. So I had to do 7.5. Yeah.
I'll ride with you. Always will. All right. Texas Tech, a team that I famously proclaimed that could make the playoffs last year. I did predict them to win the Big 12. Different Texas team.
Yeah.
But I will say I do still like Joey McGuire. I think Texas Tech is still interesting. I think their schedule is palatable. So who knows? Abilene Christian should be an easy game for them. They do play North Texas. They play a lot of bad teams. They play Arizona State, they play Cincinnati, they play TCU. They get Colorado. I don't know. I just don't really know how to feel about this team. So I hope you got some better points about it.
No. I was actually going to say this is the one time I'm kind of just going to be quiet because I came away with TCU with just a lot of questions about the roster. Like it's a lot of this unit was bad and they did this. They could improve, but they might not. So I'm like, all right, well, I don't really know what to do with that. I mean, their running back's good. Taj Brooks is really good, and they got a 5-star wide receiver, Micah Hudson, who they said is really good. But it's
is he gonna play? It's like I like Micah Hudson too, but
it's like their offensive line was a big question because it has to improve. Okay, well, what if it doesn't improve? They could suck, or it could improve because they return basically everybody, but I don't know. So
did they return everybody because nobody else wanted them? Like it's that type of thing.
Probably, yeah. And the defense is just as unproven. I mean, they lost their best players. They went to the portal. They grabbed a bunch of guys. Schedule wise, it's coin flips all up and down the schedule. So there are just too many question marks. This was an easy scout for me because I was just like, I want nothing to do with it. So you deserve whatever you get if you bet this one total. I'll say
8.5 though. It feels steep, but hey, no thanks. I'm good.
I see a 7.5, and that still doesn't change I still don't know what I would do with that. So pass.
Well, from a team we have little to nothing to say about to a team we will have a lot to say about. Let's talk about Central Florida. And I guess in the biblical sense, I could have done them way earlier, but I have them under UCF on here. So UCF, the big game that I think is really going to decide this win total, which I believe is still at 9.5, is the Florida game. If they beat Florida, they're hitting this win total. Unfortunately, they have to play at Florida. I don't think they're going to beat Florida, but it's definitely not an impossibility with the buildup of this team. The big addition, obviously, KJ Jefferson, quite literally the big addition. He's massive.
Yes.
And UCF has been a team that's they've just been punching up for a long time. Now they're in a real conference. I don't know, man. I'm a believer this year. I know you are too. So let me hear what you got to say.
Well, first of all, you said what do you have the win total at? I see 7.5. Is that what you see?
No, gosh, I think I saw 9.5. Unless I just read it wrong. Let me see.
Well, I'll go ahead and say I
go ahead. I'm going to look for this.
Malzahn, and I think everyone heard the quotes of him basically saying, like, last time I had a quarterback like this was Cam Newton, talking about KJ. I think there is a lot of truth to that in terms of the sets that they're going to run and the way Malzahn likes to run his offense. KJ is perfect for it. It's a great fit. RJ Harvey is a great running back in a conference with really good running backs. And they have a good wide receiver core. Kobe Hudson is their guy who's going to be the guy that gets the ball all the time. They've got some really good receivers. Offensive line is nice. They had a big position of need on the offensive line. They went to the portal and got a guy from Western Kentucky that they really like. So the offense should be good. Every unit on the offense ranks to be probably in like the top 5 or 6 in the conference. They're good everywhere. And then defensively too is actually the part where I was really surprised because their defensive line is really stout. And they returned basically all their starters, but their best player is a guy who was not a starter last year, who's going to step up and take some big minutes, who's projected to be all Big 12, Malachi Lawrence. Remember him. So that defensive line unit is going to be special. It's going to be one of the best ones in the conference. And their secondary was good. They went to the portal and grabbed Cincinnati's top 2 tacklers who will come in and start immediately. So
Deshaun Pace. They brought in Traquan Fagans too out of USC, which I completely forgot about.
Yeah, I like the defense will be really nice. Like I was really surprised to see how much I like the defense. So it's a good roster. Malzahn's building a good roster down there, and then the schedule's not too bad. I kind of wanted to play in over 7.5. I ended up doing to make the Big 12 championship plus 450. It just kind of felt like, if there was a world where maybe they go 7-5 or whatever, then I don't lose that win total. But I thought it was a good upside bet because I could see them really hitting it big. So I took that because I think I just like the progression and the way that this roster's come together. Malzahn's doing a great job. And I wouldn't sleep, on them. They host Arizona. They can beat Arizona for sure. Really, the only losable game or the big loss on this game is Utah at the end of the season. And that's Thanksgiving weekend. And Utah could have the conference wrapped up by then and basically have that as a meaningless game. So there's a world where I guess maybe Utah would sit people or whatever. But every game on this schedule for UCF is winnable for sure.
It's a hedge spot too. Like I said, I talk about that Florida game. It's the 5th game of the season. They open New Hampshire, Sam Houston, TCU, Colorado. They can win all 4 of those games. And if they're 5-0 beating Florida, you're going to really wish you were holding this ticket. Is my main thing. So I don't know. I kind of feel the same way you do. I don't have any super super strong feelings, but I think they're going to be a good team this year. I figured out my mistake, by the way. The 9.5 that I was reading was next to our next team, Utah.
Okay.
What we were just talking about. So clearly Utah, Cam Rising back for another year of college football. Brant Kuithe, both of these guys, they've been playing college football forever. Correct me if I'm wrong. Was Cam Rising in? Was it Trevor Lawrence's class that he was in?
I think he was. And doesn't he? I heard he has another year of eligibility.
Yeah, I think he does. And I think he said he wasn't going to use it, which
bizarre.
Is insane.
Bizarre.
But Utah, they're just always going to be a good team. They're very consistent. You know what you're going to get with them. You're going to get a team that plays hard. They bring back Micah Pittman, Brant Kuithe, so much experience on this team. There's a decent amount up front. They are starting a freshman at left tackle. But I think that Utah is going to be a good team again. Their schedule's pretty favorable. I don't see any games on here where I point to them and I say they are going to lose this game. I think over 9.5 is a pretty solid bet.
Yeah, it is. I think it's pretty heavily juiced. It's like minus 145. That's not too bad. Yeah, the offense is going to be really nice because they struggled a lot last year without Rising, without Kuthi. It was a pretty bad offense that is going to take just a huge leap this year. Getting those guys back. Their running back room is still really solid despite losing to Quindon Jackson. He went to Arkansas. They also got Dorian Singer, who is at Arizona and USC. They got their leading receiver back. Offensive line is strong like usual, like we see with these Whittingham teams. So the offense is back. The offense is going to be great. And then, like I said, with the defense, when I mentioned Kansas State, they're going to have arguably the best defense in the conference. They allowed 19 points per game last year. It was a top 15 defense in the country. They return a majority of the players at all three levels. There's not any holes in this defense at all. I mean, the one you could say would be like maybe you're a little thin in the secondary, and they went to the portal and they got guys from Michigan and Georgia Tech. Whittingham just does a really good job. Like, he's a really solid coach and who gets his guys ready. They're tough, and they were just decimated by injuries last year. They missed more games due to injury than any team in the country. So that usually will turn itself around. That's like a regression thing that will turn around. It's hard not to bet the over here, really. I'm not going to do it just because I think
it's hard to find value when numbers get to a certain size.
Yeah, I mean, and look, Utah's really good. And I would rather bet Utah to, I guess, win the Big 12 at plus 320 or to even make the college football playoff at plus 250. I would rather do that than the win total. But it's hard not to bet the over here. I think there's a lot of great games on the schedule. They're going to be favored in every game. I think the one that's close is at Oklahoma State. They're going to be -1.
That was my point. That was the one thing I was going to say is that's the one game I look at where I'm like, they might lose this game. And that's it. And when you're talking about two other losses to play with, I don't know.
It's a good team. I'd expect to see them in the 12 teams at the end of the year, whether it's the at-large or whether maybe they sneak in at 10 or 11 or something.
All right, bringing up the rear, West Virginia, a team that's win total. I was very surprised to see was only 6.5 after overachieving last year. I believe I sat on the same show last year and said that Neil Brown would be the first coach to lose his job. That was not the case. He came out on fire because we were talking about their win total, and I said, yeah, what happens if he gets fired in the middle of the year and everybody quits? Well, didn't happen. West Virginia had a pretty good season. That was one I was wrong on. But this year, it's just another team like Texas Tech. I don't have super strong feelings. The only thing I know that is of note is that they do open with Penn State and they play at Pittsburgh, which are both decently tough out of conference games. They should be able to handle Pitt. But they're keeping the rival. That's like the two old school rivalries, and I love that they've kind of kept those intact. They do have Albany sandwiched in between there, so they should get a win out of there. But 2-1, 1-2 start. I just don't know how to feel about them. I don't have very strong feelings. I do like Garrett Green. Garrett Green's pretty good. Yeah,
he was good last year. He's really solid. Not to mention they have a great offensive line. Each player that comes back on the line played 5 games last year. Like, they're going to be really set. I like their running backs a lot. CJ Donaldson, Jaheim White is a really good running back duo. So this offense that was really clicking last year, I think should do the same thing. They're not afraid to run down your throat if you have a bad defensive line. That's talking about Pitt, Kansas, Arizona, Cincinnati, all teams with bad defensive lines. I think they match up really well with a lot of these teams on their schedule. And their wide receiver room returns over 90% of last year's receiving yards. So
who they have a receiver that I didn't notice until now?
Their best, the guy that they got from Oklahoma State, Jaden Bray, is
Jaden Bray is good. No, that's not who I'm talking about. They have Justin Robinson, who I did not know was still playing.
Oh, really?
I did not know
he was where, Mississippi State too?
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah, that's interesting.
He's not penciled in as a starter right now, but he is listed on their roster.
Well, they return everybody in that room, and they should be really nice. And then their defense too. They led the Big 12 in sacks last year. They returned their defensive line. Their secondary is really nice. They returned their 2 best secondary players, and then they went and they got a cornerback from Northwestern who was the highest graded player. Yeah, Garnett Hollis, who was the highest graded player in Northwestern secondary, which was actually surprisingly good secondary. So I think this defense is going to be really nice. I wanted to pull the trigger on over 6.5 so badly. It's in the waiting room. I can't do it just yet. But I think I'll parlay this into kind of week 3 at Pitt. It's the projected line there is West Virginia -4.5. I went ahead and I bet that. I really like that a lot because you look at, I've already mentioned 20 times, I think Pitt this year is on a downward spiral. I don't like anything about their roster. And the Pitt defense, and specifically the defensive line, is going to be so below average and so bad. And you're going to get a great offensive line for West Virginia and a great running game that should be able to, like I said, they're not afraid to just go run heavy if they need to. West Virginia won it last year because they dominated that exact way. Pitt couldn't stop them, and West Virginia controlled the clock. I expect to see the same thing, so I wouldn't grab West Virginia -4.5. But as far as a win total, I haven't pulled the trigger on it yet. I want to go over. I just can't. I can't get there.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. It's just one of those teams to where like it's hard for me to really commit and dip my feet in. So we can recap now. I guess is a good transition. The 4 that I have Arizona State under 4.5. I have Kansas State over 9.5. Oklahoma State over 7.5, and TCU under 7.5. Those are the 4 that I came away with.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to see Arizona State for sure. I really like all of these in there. I think those are the 4 that I have. I really like them. If I had to go another one, maybe it would be West Virginia and Iowa State overs. I'm still going to think. Actually, oh no, BYU under 4.5. That's what it is. BYU under 4.5 is the next one I'm going to bet if I do. But
yeah. Well, you have to keep it.
What a great conference, though.
Yeah, I know. I'm excited. A basketball season's going to be so great. I know we're both college.
The conference tournament Big 12 video is going to be
That's going to be so much fun. Anyway, so we're going to finish with the Big Ten. We may have to do this in multiple parts. I guess we'll see how it goes. It's just the Big Ten is no longer 10. So we'll keep y'all posted on that. That should be coming soon. But thank y'all for joining us as always. Like I said, if you made it this far, I'm sure you've already watched ACC, SEC. We'll have the Big Ten soon. RIP to the Pac-12. Obviously not doing that this year. I guess we can we'll hand those out at the end, I guess. All right. Thank y'all as always.